Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Hello and welcome back to the Roundup with myself and a special guest every week, where we separate the fact from fiction and discuss the latest week's worth of transfer news. We are less late than last week, but as Bavs pointed out to me 2 minutes ago, we were in the wrong studio and I was about to record a video on Alex's channel and not start a live stream. So thankfully we have made it. And today there's been some exciting news for the first time in a while. So before I get into discussing some of that, I'm going to invite our special guest, and I appreciate him for coming on because he is a busy man these days. How are you, Babs?
All good, man. All good. Appreciate the invite. The Cannon Podcast faithful. We're back, baby. All good, bro. All good. All good.
Is your mic connected? Can I just check that? I don't know if mine is as well. I'm just going to double check.
Mine is connected. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, all good then. And today we'll jump straight into it. We had this plan of about 3 to 5. We always have 3 to 5 people to talk about, but right now we're gonna jump into the main one, and this might take up most of the episode. So first of all, I want to discuss a here we go. We got the first time in some time, I think. If I can share my screen, Christian Norgaard to Arsenal. Here we go, from Fabrizio, from Hand of Arsenal, from Ornstein. Agreement done, club to club, after 11 million euro proposal sent today, which is very cheap, in my opinion. We're going to discuss that. Personal terms agreed, which is also interesting to me because he's currently on 40,000 at Brentford, with Norgaard set for medical, and Brentford have authorised the player to travel. This is crazy to me also because pretty much this morning we knew Norgaard was an option, but that he wasn't close to joining us. And now he seems to be an Arsenal player. What were your initial thoughts on this, Babs?
I mean, I won't say it was one I was expecting, but I think, was it you that posted a graph the other day which had that progressive passing midfielders? And I think someone mentioned, was it yourself maybe, that you mentioned Norgaard as an option. So I think I mentioned it in a video recently just as a name that came out in terms of the stats wise. But often what happens when it comes to new reports is when the bid is announced to the world is normally like a bit more advanced. And that's why I'm not surprised it's been done like that. I know a lot of Arsenal fans are getting frustrated about the whole Shesko Gyökeres stuff, but because they're bigger deals, they're actually going to take a lot longer. Whereas this is more of a £9 million, I think it is, for a captain of Brentford. Yeah. And it just makes sense because I don't think personal terms are ever going to be an issue. Stays in London, gets a slight wage increase, if anything, and comes to a club that's fighting in the Champions League.
Yeah, massively. And I think it also should hopefully calm people down about this idea that Arsenal can't get deals over the line. This shows that we can, but when you're trying to get Rodrigo, arguably one of the best footballers in the world, one of the best wingers in the world, certainly, you cannot just walk up to Madrid and say, here's 70 mil. They're not going to do that. It takes time. You've got personal terms are far more complicated. There's more clubs involved. This deal is crazy to me, though, because also Spurs the other day, there was a report that Spurs inquired and Brentford wanted like 30, 40 million. And we've gone, here's 10 mil. And clearly we have a good relationship with Brentford, and we've got it over the line. And something you mentioned, that graph that you were talking about, I will share that on the screen and we can discuss it. If I can find it, it's here. So this was the graph, or one of the graphs that has come out basically. And I was looking at this section. So obviously you've got destroying ability, and if I can move stuff, you've got destroying ability and progressive passing, distance, touch. So there's these guys on the left-hand side, a little bit higher up, who are more Partey in mold, like to drill passes forward. And maybe we've had that in the past in kind of Lokonga, but we've seen that it's not always successful about having a midfielder who's not able to cut things out. So these were the sort of players I was looking at. We mentioned Agume. We've spoken about him lots of times. Norgaard's there, Zubamendi's there, Andre Santos. What are you looking for in a defensive midfielder if we were to sign one, which we seem to have done so?
To be like a number 6 for Arsenal, I think next year we might see more of a pivot anyways with Rice and Zubamendi, but generally speaking, we want to have numbers pushing forwards, whether it's the fullbacks and the midfielders. So you want someone that can hold it down on its own, cover distances, and cover ground, win his duels as well. To be fair, we say that, but Jorginho isn't amazing at that. and he was still doing a job when coming in as a number 6. But I think last year we saw the year before when you played alongside Declan Rice as a pivot, you have to accommodate that. Whereas Norgaard's got more natural physicality in his game. Obviously, a very good dual winner. I've seen, I think, only behind Caicedo for Jules 1 last season. And ultimately, it's a solid signing. I'm going to sit and say I'm very excited about it. It's just a deal that made sense. I think Arsenal saw that Partey was leaving and said, look, let's get a player in who we can rely upon even for a couple of seasons and a bit of safety, if anything, because there's no guarantee with Zubimendi that he comes in and thrives to Partey's level straight away. Because Thomas Partey, of course, high-level midfielder. But when you've got a player who's played in the Premier League, he's someone that you can rely upon in certain game states, even off the bench, I've seen he's got decent aerial numbers as well. So from Set Piece FC, we're going to be cooking. But it's a solid deal. Nothing too exciting. Just one that made sense for the price tag.
Something that was mentioned today by, I think, Sam Dean, the journalist, is that now with Partey and Jorginho going, Norgaard will be our oldest player, which is a bit crazy because he's only 31. So that shows that there is a gap in experience in our squad. So yes, we could sign Agume, we could keep signing these young guys, but there needs to be an old head. And what you mentioned that I resonate with a lot is someone who can be relied on. Because this idea of if we've got Zubimendi, sure, we had Partey and Jorginho who we knew were up to standard, at least to the point that we can rely on them. If we got Agume and Zubimendi, if Zubimendi was even to get injured, then we're looking at Agume thinking, right, we need you to step up. And
do you trust him?
We've done that in the past before with players like Lokonga. I'm not saying they're the same player exactly, but had he kind of fit into the role of Lokonga, we couldn't trust him. And we've suffered too many times in recent years where Arteta's not been able to trust the backup, and because of that, he's been overusing the first team player. So hopefully, this signing will signal in games against Leeds at home, these easier games, we will be able to start Norgaard and potentially rest Rice. We'll see. Just on that Agume Norgaard topic, how do you feel about going Norgaard instead of the younger guy? Because a lot of people, I feel like there's a big division where some people are saying win now, and some people are saying why are we signing a 30-year-old? And the same thing happens with Sesko and Gyökeres.
That's why I know it's a bit confusing, because it's like some Arsenal fans don't know what they want. The difference, I think, with this is because we've got an experienced midfielder in Zubimendi. He's 25, so he's more in the peak of his powers. So with the Sesko Gyökeres, it's either a bit of inexperience or a bit of absolute experience. In the case of Norgaard, I think it's just don't overthink it. Arsenal wanted a backup, which was what Jorginho was last season, and Norgaard is a backup. Likewise, Kepa Arrizabalaga. So you're signing players that don't need to be overthought of, how they're going to fit into the first team and can they be impact makers. They're just players to keep the floor at a certain level, and hopefully your main players like Zubimendi hit the ground running. Rice hits new levels as well, and those are the players you rely upon to win a title. Whereas like Norgaard's a player that you might have to call upon here and there, and it's just about doing a solid job. I don't expect him to come in and become a starter. And I think, for the price tag as well, it just makes sense. You're not spending a lot of amount. At £9 million is, I think, a very good deal for a player who's got 4 seasons of Premier League experience with Brentford captain as well. So I feel like it's just one that you don't need to overthink too much. You got a player who can back up there. He does a decent enough job. Physically, he's better than Jorginho, maybe not on the ball. But we'll see how he adapts into Mikel Arteta's style of play. And, off the bench, I think in certain games when you see him out, I don't think Norgaard's a bad option to bring off.
And look at these numbers at the bottom, by the way. Tackles, interceptions, blocked. This is the sort of guy that, especially, we kind of missed the Rob Holding protocol. We stopped doing that, but this is the kind of guy that you can stick in to shut up shop, and they're getting nowhere. So I think he's going to be such a useful asset, especially for the price. We're going to have a lot of money left over on the side to be able to, hopefully, that my biggest appraisal with this transfer kind of depends on what we do for the rest of the window. Because if we then use this money, I said on Twitter earlier to get Hato, and people went, "Oh, you're still talking about defenders," and I was like, it's just to make a point. But if we can use this money to then sign a third attacker, or then to sign Hato and put Lewis Skelly in midfield sometimes, then I think it's a good signing. But it really does depend on, are we penny pitching for a reason, or are we just penny pitching because we want?
There is a reason. I think a lot of us see that. There is a reason there. In the sense of, last year, we were fixated on the number one targets, whether it's goalkeeper or attacker. If you didn't get them, we'd not sign no one. So we don't want to be in a case this year where if we didn't sign a backup goalkeeper and, rivals to get injured, you have to rely upon more an experienced player. You got Kepa in there now who can do a decent enough job. I think Bournemouth last year, the best ever Premier League finish, and I think he was a starter week in, week out. And likewise, Norgaard. It's just about safety. if anything. And they're not expensive transfers, both combined for £15 million for two players that have the experience and can do a job.
And I like this, like, problems are coming up with goalkeeper. We needed a backup goalkeeper. We looked at Garcia. It's not happening. All right, we go for Kepa. Partey isn't going to sign a new contract. Okay, we go for Norgaard. It's not a problem. In the past, we've done, like you said, we've kind of faffed about with these problems for too long. Our focus should be on attack. And our focus is on attack. That's why we're not wasting time and money doing this, because we've got bigger fish to fry. We do have a super chat from Alejandro Tiburcio. And he's happy to see you back, Babs. Babs, it's good to see you back again, mate. It's good to see you again, mate. Are you coming back? He says.
Am I coming back? What? Recycle the kind of podcast. We'll chat to the agents. Yeah, it'll be good, guys. It'll be good.
This goes above my head and above Bab's head, maybe. We don't speak about the behind the scenes. That is Berta and Arteta's responsibility, not ours. We'll see. And someone says, Babs, we need you back to lighten up things sometimes. That's sweet. Hey, a lot of love for Babs in the chat today, which is nice, because there's a lot of pricks online who are chatting the worst. Because
online, we mean Twitter, we mean X.
Yeah, I mean X, because when you are successful, as Babs is, you get a lot of people chatting absolute bollocks. But yeah, I think the club is in a good place now, where we can focus on left winger up front, and hopefully I still persist a third attacker. And something we will discuss today is the potential sale of Martinelli, because that is something that has arisen in the past week. I'm going to get a graphic for us while you speak. How do you feel about selling Martinelli? If you had the choice between selling Martinelli and Trossard, who would you choose and why?
It's a bit of a weird one, because they're both versatile players. We saw last year, when Saka was out injured, he used Martinelli on the right a few times, and there's always been a dream of seeing him centrally, but we haven't seen it for a while, so I don't think it's going to be something that we see in the near future. Trossard does offer more in the sense that you can play down the middle in certain games, and also in midfield. I mean, last year when Nørgaard was injured, I think we were starting Trossard as a 10. Even the game against Man City, we got sent off. He was playing as a number 10. I would choose Martinelli because of the upside long-term wise as well. The issue is you've got an asset there that if you next year sign a Rodrigo, whoever your starting left wing signing will be, he's going to depreciate. And unless you give him a new contract, it's going to be harder to get the money that he's worth. You see Semenyo worth 70. I've seen from Bournemouth. I've seen Abuemo worth 60. These are players that are starting week in, week out. If Martinelli's not starting next season for Arsenal, his value will naturally go down. And so far, no new deal has been signed either. So I think right now is, if you want to cash in a Martinelli, and you know that he won't be a starter next season, now is the best time. Because if you keep him on the bench, his value goes down. And then it becomes a question of what teams come in for him. I think obviously there'll be teams after him. I'm seeing interest in Garnacho, and I think Martinelli's a better player than Garnacho. And we can, demand a sizable fee, but it's one that we have to wait. I'm not putting him on the transfer list, telling clubs and agents, here's Martinelli, take him if you want. It's more, he's available if the right price comes in. And if not, again, next year, he's a player off the bench that I think the pace in transition in certain games in the Champions League is going to be useful. And obviously, maybe, if we sign a Rodrigo, for all Martinelli might go, look, I was once upon a time a starter, a guaranteed starter. Now I'm not. You might up his levels, and that's what competition does. Sometimes the players you already have might just have that little, okay, these men are being serious, I need to move serious as well.
Yeah, I mean, his goal scoring record for Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, is actually better. This is the original story. One of the original stories that came out about Bayern specifically being interested in him. This was, I will say, part of about 5 different wingers that Bayern were interested in. I don't know if you saw Luis Diaz, Gakpo, Martinelli, Nico Williams. So what I want to say also is that you got to take some of these stories with a pinch of salt. But even still, we can debate whether we would or not. And I think what you said was really important about the value, because we really, really struggle as a fan base. Maybe because we've been burned in the past with growing up, myself and yourself. I think we're similar age. Guys like Fabregas, Van Persie, we were selling stars and replacing them with not superstars. Now, I think people are forgetting we are a top side. And when you become that good, you have to start selling these guys, these top players. And if you look back, we sold Smith Rowe, and a lot of people were pushing back at the time. Now, I hope we can all agree that selling Smith Rowe was the right decision, because since then we've only been vindicated in getting the money for him. So Yeah, I'd rather part ways with Trossard because also I think Martinelli offers something in the attack that no one else can really do in stretching games. Games like Liverpool, maybe it was the Trent effect, maybe it was him playing against Trent, but he seemed to thrive every single time. And in the Champions League this season, he scored an important goal against Real Madrid, and he has delivered for us. But if we're going to sign Rodrigo, there's not room for everyone. And in an ideal world, we'd probably sell Jesus, but Jesus is injured the same way Tomiyasu's injured, and they're taking up squad spots. But again, if we do sell him, then can we do something with the money? Because I don't see
we probably
why.
can. But I don't see why we can't spend the money on Rodrigo and keep Martinelli. Because we've been saving for so long.
I agree.
You know, we didn't spend nothing in January. We spent next to nothing last summer in a sense, not on any attackers. We should be able to invest on 2 marquee attackers. You know, I'm seeing Liverpool go for Florian Wirtz, and they're still talking about, I think Isak's unrealistic, but another striker as well. So we've saved enough to go and spend on another attacker. But on the case of Martinelli, I think we also lack a lot of pace. So I wouldn't then get rid of one of the only players that does have pace, because, you know, I think to be a top team now, you need to have different facets. And I think Trossard and Rodrigo, in terms of that tight space, Rodrigo replaces that straight away. He's more complete than Martinelli, but I don't think he's as explosive as Martinelli in terms of that natural pace. So I would definitely keep Martinelli, unless a crazy offer arrives, in which case, you know, you're open to it, and then it gives Arsenal extra incentive to go and then sign a Rodrigo with no excuses.
I mean, there was a discussion that was circulating on Twitter for the past week, which is which of our players are untouchable. And there is a discussion, like Martinelli isn't untouchable, of course. Saka is, Saliba is. I'd say Gabriel is right now, Rice is. But there are a lot of players in this squad that if the right deal, if the right offer came in, you've got to accept it. And for me, Martinelli is one of those. The last thing I want to say on him is we've also got to be careful because we've not platformed the left wingers at all. So there's no guarantee that Rodrigo, unless we change the system, Rodrigo is going to come in and thrive either, because we know how this system works. They're so isolated. So right now we look at Martinelli and think he's not doing enough, but are we getting enough out of him? Are we platforming him enough as a player? I think it's a little bit of both, but he might go to a team like Bayern and absolutely thrive. And I think certain teams he would suit down to a T, and I think he'd do really well.
Confidence plays a part. The finishes that we saw, the instincts we saw back in 22-23, a lot of it was just like natural belief that I'm that player. I think the last couple of seasons he's kind of declined, and then he starts to question himself. He's not as confident in taking his man on. You know, there was that time where he was cooking Trent time and time again. Even that game, do you know when he came back from his injury initially? It was against Chelsea or City in the Carabao Cup, and then Chelsea in the league. But it was more City, and he was just taking players on freely with his confidence, and he was. Martinelli's always had a little bit of an unnatural style of dribbling. He doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as Rodrigo, but he was just taking people on constantly. Whereas in the last season or two, it feels more predictable, and teams know how to defend him, know that force him onto his weaker side, and he won't go inside, and he's become predictable. So we'll see how he develops going forwards.
I think that's a good point, because he's always like, people will say, look at how he dribbles, but he used to dribble the same, but he used to work because he'd believe in himself, because he had the pace to get past people. I think it's because that lack of confidence, now he's doing something very, very similar, but a slight difference, and that slight difference is basically killing him. Someone in the chat has said, look at Norgaard's FB ref, it's all green. We did actually bring this up earlier. And yeah, so once the video comes out, watch back in the video and you'll see it. One thing I do need to go through that I should promise is the 5 rating scale. I don't know if you've seen this before, Babs, but my job on this channel is to rate the rumors about how true we think they are. They still need to change names. Some of the names aren't codswallop. That's a great word. It just means bollocks, basically. No, it's not even a northern. It's a posh word, basically.
I've never had a posh guy say codswallop.
It just means bollocks, basically, but it's the James word for the Cannon Pod. I'm gonna go. So obviously Norgaard will stick your house on it. I am willing to say, stick your house on it. You'll get barely any money back, but that's definitely gonna happen now. Martinelli leaving to Bayern. Where are you ranking that?
Right now, it's so I'm guessing. I want to say complete codswallop. Makes for a fun story. Because I've not seen
That's-
any offers coming just yet. That's why.
That's why I think it lands. And I think that title actually works quite well. It does make for a fun story, and it makes for a good title on YouTube that we will clip and make sure that everyone clicks on the video. Right, the next player we're going to talk about is a potential Martinelli replacement, and someone that the rumors have come like few and far between. But some people asked me to talk about it today. Morgan Rogers. How would you feel about Morgan Rogers to Arsenal? Do you think there's any truth in it? Where do you stand on this while I get a fucking picture of him?
No, I think there is truth in the sense of Villa have severe FFP problems. So there's a situation you can take advantage of. And if there's one player that you'd sign there, Watkins is more of like a backup striker option. Rogers he's a game changer in the sense of he can break games. He's got powerful dribbling, running in behind. We've seen it against Arsenal. I think it was one of the first games of last season where he just ran for our midfield time and time again. And it's something that we lack. You know, someone who just got that balls to pick up the ball and just take it past man after man. It's that ability to forget the system. I've got the quality. I can beat you. I can cause issues in behind. So he's definitely a profile I love. I love him more centrally than out wide, to be honest. He has got more power. He hasn't got the raw pace, but he's got the power to use his physique and burst past you. A bit like Miles Lewis-Skelly. I just don't know if it will happen with our number one target being Rodrigo. And again, they're kind of different in a sense. He's more of a player who I still would need an overlapping fullback, whereas Rodrigo's more of a natural wide forward and can play down the middle as a striker. Rogers, for me, as a number 8, I think would really thrive with the idea of Rice there next to him as well, with the power and Zubimendi behind him. But then again, I don't think he replaces Martin Nørgaard in Mikel Arteta's books just yet. Very good profile. Just don't know where he'd guaranteed start just yet.
Yeah, I think that's where I stand. And if we were in Man City's financial situation where they seem to be able to buy any single player they want in this market, potentially that's because something's coming on the horizon, but I didn't say that. Then maybe we would be looking at the luxury of being able to sign this guy for 50 million. But right now we're not. We do have problems to solve, and he's not a natural left winger. He also isn't a natural like attacking midfielder in the way that Nørgaard is an attacking midfielder in my eyes. I don't think he's a chance creator. He's a game breaker, and he's something that we lack. So the word that you said, I think, was just basically ignore the system and make your own plays. And I think that is super, super important because we don't really have enough of that at the moment. Like Mavericks, basically.
That's what I'm saying.
But also, if I'm looking at an attacking midfielder, left winger hybrid, I think I'd take Eze over him. And I do like... Go on.
I agree. Eze definitely in the sense of, if you're talking about left number 10, we've not seen anyone part right start there consistently, at least in the last season. Eze gives us a great solution. Likewise, Rogers. I think Rogers is probably more available because of his FFP. But if they sell someone else, then maybe it's Eze. I think Spurs are after Eze, and the price tag isn't that bad. I've release clause, if I'm right in saying, of like £60 million.
Yeah, I
both
think
profiles so. They're both profiles are like, because of the fact, as I said, they just break games. They kind of forget where I need to be. It's like, I've got the ball and I've got the quality to beat you. That five-a-side mentality. And it's just that arrogance that I want more of my team because we work hard off the ball, but we saw against Paris Saint-Germain, the quality wasn't there. And quality you can't beat. And Rogers, for me, has got that natural just level to run it past you.
Yeah. And I guess my Rogers, especially in games that are stretched like PSG, would be able to just beat players and use the whole pitch. But my concern is he becomes far less valuable in our system against teams that are going to sit back against us, which is so far more often than Villa face. Emery's system platforms guys like this perfectly because Tielemans gets the ball on the half turn and they spring it forward. Now, we don't do that enough, of course, but because of how high our defensive line is and how we squeeze the pitch, we really just don't see that type of space. So lovely footballer, and someone that I definitely take up my football club, but I just don't see it happening. So we'll again whack out the I've lost it. Whack out the 5-point rating scale, which absolutely needs a new name if anyone has any suggestions. But personally, I don't think Rogers is going to rank highly on this. So I've nearly found it now. Here we go. I'm going to tweet now. Here we go. Where are you placing it on the scale?
Same as Martinelli. Makes a fun story. because on paper it makes a lot of sense in terms of what he could do, what he could offer. But then you think about where's he going to start. You go, hang on a minute. Is he a left winger? Is he a number 10? That's why right now it's just a fun story. Unless, Mikel sees him as like, no, I can make him a top left winger. And in which case, stick your house on it.
I'm even debating whether it does make for a fun story, but I'm even debating whether I'd go that far. I think the length, like the amount of links that have come out, so as far as I'm aware, like 1 or 2 people have reported it, and then Arsenal fans have found it and gone, I like this guy. So we've kind of made it a bigger thing, but I don't think it's complete codswallop. So somewhere between 1 and 2, but I don't know. I don't think he's the most Arteta player out there. So we'll see. Joey, who's been a member for 5 months, says, what's a codswallop? By the end of this show, my role of hosting this show, as it stands, my contract is for this summer. By the end of summer, all Arsenal fans will hopefully know what codswallop means. It means nonsense in informal British, apparently. It means nonsense, rubbish, or drivel. And drivel is also a great word. For the remaining 10 or so minutes in the chat, I'm wondering, does anyone in the chat have other rumours that they'd like us to discuss? Someone that I think we have to talk about because he's been mentioned quite a lot over the past week, and there has been a scouted episode on the Cannon podcast as well, is Hato. Where do you stand on Hato? Do you think the rumours are true? And what would this mean if they are true for Arsenal moving forward?
I think the rumours are very much true because you've lost Kieran Tierney. You're going to lose Zinchenko most likely as well. Nothing about Kiwior just yet, but I think Hato's a player who he's a market opportunity that you need to take now, because if you don't and you go somewhere else, you're going to be like, if only we had signed him. Because I don't think he's that expensive right now either. I've not seen the quoted price tag, but I don't think it'll be anything more than maybe 20, 30 million. And ultimately just gives us what you want. A player who can play left centre back, play left back as well. Covers an area that we're going to lose in, lose 2 players in. And I just think, he's in 19 now, and he's, as you see, he's captain Ajax already as well. Very comfortable going forwards. I've seen some people compare him a bit like he can be molded into like a Nuno Mendes type player. I've not seen that myself. I don't watch the player live, but I can see the ball carrying ability. I can see that he can cross from the half space as well. So there's a lot to work with there. And I think he's a player who you just sign and you develop, and in a couple of years' time, you go, this is the, what, a player that could cost you £80 million in the current market.
And I think this is a really, really interesting rumor to me because there's a lot of moving pieces. So obviously Kiwior would probably have to move on for it to happen. But if we do sign him, then we've got Calafiori, Lewis Skelly, and himself as left backs. Calafiori can also play centre back. Lewis Skelly can also play in midfield. So that would arguably mean that one of them, their future would be in a different position. Now, I can't, maybe kind of a mix of everything, but I can't imagine that Calafiori's role would just be as backup left centre back. So potentially that means Lewis Skelly would move into midfield, or that's the long-term plan for him, which to me is super exciting because that would also suggest why we've gone for Norgaard and potentially not like an Agume type player because he blocked the pathway. So I think this would be a very, very useful signing, especially for the right price. And again, if we get him, I would feel it would justify us penny pinching in other areas because I don't know. I just think that's a talent. And as it says here, Arsenal keen to sign him because we've been tracking him since he's 15 years old. And the last time we went to the shop of Ajax and got timber, it was a good shop. So I would like to be back to the shop of Ajax and signing another fullback of theirs. Comment from Hand of Arsenal, should I say nowadays, without the umlaut on his without the umlaut on his name, which caused absolute chaos on Twitter for the past few days. Hato or Hato, I don't know how you say it. If there are any Dutch people, please tell me. Hato has always been admired by myself, by the Cannon podcast, by Bavs and Arsenal, apparently. And I hear, I like you haven't watched much of him, but I've heard he is much better on the overlap than people would assume as a centre back. So if we can sign someone like him, all of a sudden the opportunity of getting Rodgers and Rodrigo makes more sense because we'd have an overlapper.
Which is very important as well, because whether Rodrigo or Martinelli, you want someone to complement them. And, we've seen Ben White's impact on the right-hand side. I think Hato, if he can do that, because I think Miles isn't as good at overlapping. He's much more better centrally and more of a midfielder by trade, which is why I think his future is centrally. But as an actual fullback, I've seen Hato's crossing and it looks very, very good to work off.
Yep. Also, Alex is in the chat. Big up the boys, of course. Also, Alex, the fans are saying, "Where's Bab's contract? Where's Bab's contract?" But that's none of my business. Right below. Also, this is an interesting comment. What about the El Canous personal term rumors? I personally haven't seen any, but if you're gonna make me get out the 5-point rating scale, I would have it at absolute codswallop because I don't know, man. I love Eddie Uiso. Please tell me where you have seen the El Canous personal term stuff, because I don't know, not for me. I think that's just kind of throwing money at someone who isn't good enough now, and I personally don't think he has really the potential to be a title-winning player. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the player quite a lot. I've seen him in a few games with Leicester last season. A lot of quality there, but I think the rumours we're talking about here is fairly unreliable. Nothing reliable so far. That's why right now it is codswallop. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I think attacking midfield wise, because of the platform that Mikel wants to give to Ethan and maybe even Max, but Max is too far away. I think signing an attacking midfielder, unless he's ready-made now, El Canous is 22, 21, kind of gets in Ethan's way as well, unless he wants to play on the left-hand side. So right now he's codswallop.
Yep,
Oh,
makes sense to me.
I'm
I'm so glad I've got Bav saying that. Now I can just clip that, and every time someone's chatting shit, I just get codswallop. Why would Kivior need to leave? We're losing 3 left backs this summer: Tavares, Tierney, and Zinchenko. Yeah, but we had 6 left backs on the bench for some games last season. There was one game in the Champions League. I can't remember which one it was. Maybe PSV. I think there was a
second leg. Was
it a goal that they all combined?
Yeah, it was a second leg. He had Zinchenko and Miles in midfield. He had Tierney left wing. Was it left wing? And it was left wing as well. Yeah, we love the left backs, don't we? But look, incredible. It does make sense. You're losing 2, Zinchenko and Tierney. Miles, we know that we all want to see him centrally. So again, you're kind of not losing him there, but you're moving him away. Just leaves you with Kivior and Calafiori. And I think Hato could be maybe more natural on that side as well.
And also, just in general, we kind of see how many numbers have left us this summer. We will need bodies because we were short last season, and the amount of guys. Tierney was actually playing at left wing and at left back sometimes. We will need a lot of players to cover, and money has been saved from these wages. So yeah, that's another topic we can kind of briefly discuss, is the Zinchenko to AC Milan, I think it was rumors. Did you see any of them? What do you think?
I think the rumors are kind of over, because I saw maybe Matteo Moretto reported that it's not happening, or and Fulham have more interest. I think his wages are always going to be a problem, unless you're a team in the Champions League. And obviously Milan last year finished 8th in the Serie A, so they're going to have that European money. Fulham could maybe offer more wages, and the fact that he's in London as well, so less time for family to move away and stuff like that. It does matter to players. The issue I have is the price tag we want is not what we're going to get because of that wage. Because of was it £150,000 a week? Unless he's going to a team inside the Champions League willing to pay that, or even slightly higher, then we're gonna have to sacrifice the transfer fee in a sense. Because I doubt teams will want to pay £20 million plus £150,000 a week.
Yeah, it feels actually crazy that Fulham, rightly so, think they can land him for about 10 million, because again, we've got guys like this who are on too high wages. But that would be such a bargain for a team who are able to get him for that, because this guy is still a very, very good player. And someone said that they've got Anthony Robinson at left back. Don't forget, this guy plays in midfield for Ukraine. He can play in various places on the pitch. And yeah, I just think I would like him. I would really like to see him at Fulham or anywhere back playing, because I don't know, he lost his touch at Arsenal. He kind of physicality began to show. But I still think there's a player there, and I was almost quite surprised that Arteta stopped using him as much as he did.
Yeah, I think Miles coming through definitely plays a part, because Miles' profile was similar. In fact, he's a midfielder playing a left back. It's kind of blocked his path. Whereas I think if Miles didn't play as much this season, Zinchenko would have been more used. But he's a player who needs to feel like he's one of the best in the club. And at Fulham, he would automatically be that. Technically, we've seen the quality. And let's not forget, when he came to Arsenal, we were 5 for top 4. He's come in, he elevated us to a title charge. And then that season, people thought he was like undisputed starter as well. Obviously, we've seen the issues that you have, which every player has, by the way. I think his defensive frailties get kind of overspoken about too many times. He's not the best, but he's not the worst. And a team like Fulham, who are not, with all due respect, used to seeing high quality technical players, Zinchenko will look like Lionel Messi to them. You're going to see a player who can just fire a ball in behind in and through the lines. You're going to and just how Arsenal fans saw it. We went from like Kieran Tierney was good, but not technically amazing in terms of firing passes forwards. We saw Zinchenko come in and we were like, wow, life changed. And Man City fans told us, just give it a bit of time. He's got a few issues, and eventually we saw them, unfortunately.
Also, it makes sense. I feel like it makes sense for Fulham because if I'm not mistaken, their midfield partnership last season was Lukic played a lot of games for them.
Yeah.
And Pereira or Sander Berg, but these guys are like Zinchenko is levels on them. So if you believe what Iwobi says, Iwobi hinted at an interview that they would be maybe signing some more Arsenal players this summer. If you believe that, then I don't know. There's a chance that Zinchenko would go. And yeah, I would love to get more than 10 million, but I think we're just going to have to cut our losses. But last thing I want to say on this, and you alluded to it yourself, he wasn't a failed signing. I really, really don't agree with people's idea of, oh, look at our signings, Zinchenko, Jesus, failed signings. They weren't. They were exactly what we needed at the time, and then we outgrew them. The fact that we outgrew them shows how good we came as a club. If Chelsea could sign 2 players right now that would get them to title challenging status for 80 million, they've spent 1.6 billion and they haven't achieved that.
Let's not forget, when we signed Jesus and Zinchenko, the goal was never to fight for a title. Not at that stage. Yeah. It was to secure Champions League football. Since both of those arrived, we've got Champions League football consistently. So they delivered on that aspect. When we signed Gabriel Jesus, no one's got like title charge. We were going, we'll get top 4 next year, maybe not. And obviously we end up fighting for a title. So they've done their job. And I wouldn't say it's £35 million perfectly spent, but if you wanted Champions League football and that was more valuable to you, he secured it. And fair play to him.
Also, and like I understand, yes, Isak would have been the perfect sign instead of Jesus. Maybe he would have been who we should have got, but like we weren't shopping in the same markets as PSG as the main super teams, because people will say, oh, why didn't we get Nuno Mendes? Because PSG were in for him. We were 5th team in the Premier League. We did not have that pull. We had to get Man City scraps these guys. We couldn't sign Haaland. Haaland wouldn't have come to us. Julian Alvarez for 20 million wouldn't have come to us because Man City wanted him. So to be able to, and this is the same reason Chelsea are signing Delap and Jackson and Kolo Muani, because the very, very best players on the market want to go to the very best teams. So you've kind of, you can't go straight to the top. You've got to climb up the ladder slowly.
Certain level. Even most of Arteta's signings haven't always been his actual number ones. I remember seeing an article, maybe from the Athletic, about Ben White and the fact that obviously he's a great signing, but he actually wanted Koundé first. But Koundé went to Barcelona because he had Champions League football. And so we ended up getting Ben White. So a lot of the players we've signed is because that's what we could have got at that level. Ben White was happy to come to Arsenal, try to get in Champions League football, versus Koundé, who's going to go from Sevilla to Barca.
And the perfect players are the players that you can sign at the time and then grow with the club. Like your Gabriel. Gabriel is a perfect example of someone who was attainable. We were against Napoli, Everton, Chelsea, I believe. And then he's now growing with the potential. And Ben White, I'd say, also grew into a title challenge. And some of these guys did. But you can't get them every time. There's just been released an exclusive, I believe, in the chat. Alex Moneypenny says, I can confirm we are monitoring Babs. Well, if the transfer window is anything to go by, monitoring means fuck all. So nothing's happening. The podcast is exploring a deal. Okay, that's it. That's an exclusive. I don't know about the reliability of this Alex Moneypenny journalist.
He is a bit hit and miss sometimes, Yeah, I've seen some reports. I heard Rohan was getting a laptop and then he kind of delayed after, so I'm not quite sure on that.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on this Alex Moneypenny figure because he's an interesting one. Just catching. Okay, lads. I will read other chats other than Alex's, but I think as the owner of the channel, he does take some precedent. Lads thought on there being 3 Gabriels, 2 Mikkels, 2 Martins, and 3 Ards. So I'm trying to get my head around this. What's Norgaard's? No, Norgaard adds to the Ards.
Norgaard.
We're not talking about that. That's enough of Alex. I'm just having a look at any to be fair, Isak was available. We passed. Yeah, and as I say,
You know,
no team is
yeah.
perfect. Go on.
I was going to say, I guarantee at the time that we've signed Isak, and it was he scored at 4 league goals that year, something not
Mhm.
insane. And Jesus was available, and he went to, I think Chelsea were after him, Madrid after him. There would have been fans that was said at that time, why are you going for the inexperienced player who's not scored 20 league goals, whereas Gabriel Jesus is available? That's where, as fans, I just like to wait, because these people that run these clubs know more than I do, because that's the reason why they're the professionals, and I'm the commentator in a sense. I listen and I talk about football. But yeah, I don't think it's ever winning with fans. And we talked about with Norgaard and Nagume. You want experience,
Mhm.
inexperience, but then with Gyökeres and Sesko, it's experience, non-experience. It just goes both ways. You can never appease everyone. There's always going to be a dislike.
Especially the Twitter fan base. Also, this is a bit of a hot take maybe, but in the short term, I don't think Isak would have had as transformative effect on Arsenal as Jesus did. Jesus changed the whole way we play. Isak, no doubt, long
Same.
term would have been better, but I don't think we'd have been so close to challenging for the title if Isak joined us that first season. Because in
For all you
himself,
know, if Saliba had stayed fit that year and Jesus had stayed fit for most of it, we could have won a title in that first season. And we didn't know Jesus was going to get in. It was an ACL this season, you know? He was picking up form again as well. Obviously, we know Isak's a better player now. But at that time, if Gabby Jesus had a title to his name, no one would care about it.
it gets me emotional thinking about it, man. Honestly, those 10, 13 games before Jesus' injury, the Crystal Palace game, that period was probably my favourite period as an Arsenal fan, period. Obviously, we were battering teams and emptying stadiums the year after, which was fun, but the football on display when Jesus was just doing jang, jang, jang. Honestly.
Palace, what day. And also because our expectations weren't that high. It was just get Champions League football. We kind of missed that because we got it and went for a title straight away. So we kind of skipped that phase straight away. Because like Chelsea this year, £1 billion spent, they're celebrating Champions League football. We never got to do that because we just kind of went straight into it. And it was like, now you got to win a title. And then last year was high expectations and we kind of underperformed. But second is normally back in the day for us would have been a good season. But now it's like we've got this high expectation. That's why fans right now, I can sense the unrest because of the expectation. We need to win next season. We have to sign Rodrigo because we've waited too long. And now when you got those high expectations, you have to deliver.
It's a big transfer window, and hopefully we don't end up with this because this was inexcusable. And I think that our strategy last transfer window was the reason for things like this. And it looks to me like this transfer window, Edu's no longer here, but this transfer window we seem to not be making the same mistakes. Had it have been last year, we'd have left defensive midfielder to last, and then on deadline day, Norgaard would have gone to Spurs. Every other guys would have gone. We'd have gone, Douglas Luiz, you want to come? And Juventus would have gone, no, he's not coming. And we'd have signed someone on loan. So we're being proactive. Berta seems to be mapping out all the available targets. And then we're going, I want you. And we'll see. We don't know what it looks like in the boardroom, but I like the way things are moving so far.
Yeah, no, I'm not doubting that we're going to sign a striker either. It will be either Sesko or Gyökeres. So it's like just waiting to see which one happens. Which both players elevate us. So you can argue about the profiles, but both players give us things that we don't have. So there's two signings that elevate us as well. It's just that when you get linked to a player as an Arsenal fan and football fans in general, if you don't sign that player within 2 weeks, fans start going, same reports again and again. We've seen it so many times over the transfer windows. We're kind of used to it now. We should have experience about this, guys. Act like you've been here before.
We haven't. That's the problem. We haven't. I also echo this guy's thoughts. Well said, Bavs. My based dude. I don't speak American, but I think based means like sound guy. That's how I'm going to take it. And Vlad, who is a regular on this channel. First 6 months, Gabby Jesus was almost Ballon d'Or quality. I was, as I said before, I was in disbelief. This was R9 playing for Arsenal. And no one will ever make me forget that. Yeah, sure, 9 whole games, but the guy busted his knee at the World Cup. It's like, I have a hip injury. I can't run. Don't take the piss out of him. Apart from that, we could do. I don't know what this means. Do you speak mustache? No idea. Right. I think that marks about the end of the show because 45 minutes is my limit. But as always, I like to go slightly over just to annoy Alex. Before I wrap up, two things I need to do. One is to shout out the scouted episode on Norgaard on Cannon Podcast tonight, which I will also be watching, because sort of player that I've watched Brentford games so many times, you don't really notice him, which is often a good thing for a defensive midfielder, but he just goes about his business. So I will be watching, I assume, George, Alex, and maybe Rohan analysing in a little bit more detail what this guy is all about. And finally, Bavs, if people don't already know you, which I don't believe to be the case, I've seen this guy be noticed in public all over, but if people don't, where can they find you?
On the kind of podcast. Bavs for Ian on YouTube and on Instagram and on TikTok.
And on Twitter, but the guy doesn't need
I don't
to tweet.
tweet. I don't tweet anymore.
He's got other responsibilities. But apart from that, thank you all for coming. And this was one of my most viewed live streams, which brings pressure, but with pressure,
Movements, man.
diamonds. So thanks for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Electrifying. Inspiration.